Hi everyone, this is George Pajon from the New York Harbor School. Today I am using Screencast-O-Matic to make a video, a screencast. This is a new software that I'm trying out, so bear with me. And I'm using this video to explain to fellow teachers how to use this spreadsheet that I worked on with Melissa Dowd at the Harbor School to keep track of our students' labs. And it's a real time saver if you're trying to figure out how many lab credits the student has, especially at the end of the year. The spreadsheet basically calculates it for you. But there's a little bit of setup required, so this video is going to explain how that works. So right here on the first page you see the instructions. So the first thing you have to do, and please don't forget to do this, is to make a copy. Please do not make edits on the original document. And we'll use biology as an example. So this is a biology lab sheets. I'm going to pretend it's Melissa and Rebecca's class, or the one that they've been teaching over the years. There you go. So now we have a copy of it, and then just go ahead and close the original. So that way there's no risk of messing with the algorithms. All right, that's the first step. Now, if you go down here, you see that there's various tabs. Period 1, C1, period 2, C2, etc., etc. So there's a period sheet and a C, or a credits sheet, for each section. Most of us don't teach 8 periods of the day, obviously, so what I would do is just go ahead and delete the tabs for periods that you do not teach. So last year I taught Earth Science for periods 1 and 8. So I'm just going to keep period 1 and C1 and period 8 and C8. And I'll fast forward through this part. Alright, so here we are. So now we just have the instructions sheet, which I just sort of leave up there just in case you forget. Period 1, C1, and period 8, C8. And then there's this labs tab over here. And you want to keep that too. I'll tell you what that's about in a minute. But the first thing we should do is just start adding your roster. So first name and last name. I have my gradebook open, but I don't want to open it and have students see their grades or show you grades that are confidential. So I'm just going to open a screenshot of a few names, and we'll just start with a limited list. Obviously this is not my full roster, but it'll do for now. So I'm gonna just make this a little smaller so you can see both. And I just do this manually. I mean, you can probably copy and paste it from a spreadsheet, but especially in the beginning of the year, I think it's actually really good to remember their names, just to type in their names fully. Another reason I like to type it in is also because sometimes I get the spellings wrong over the course of the year. So if in the beginning of the year I can start getting the names right and the spellings right, it'll be a value. So once I type that in, close this. So notice that my C1 sheet automatically updated the names. So you don't need to type them in twice. If you just type it into the periods sheet, your credits sheet is going to automatically update. Which brings me to my important point number 1. Never ever change anything on this C1 and C8 sheets. You never need to touch this. This is basically the computer that's going to calculate all the credits. And if you change something, it could mess up the equation. So never change that. Okay. Same thing goes for this column right here, the total column. That is a locked column. So if I try typing in a number of credits manually into that column, it's going to give me an error message, and you should cancel. You should not type in these number of credits manually. Next step, and this should be sort of the last step for your initial setup. This is your labs sheet. And this is where you're going to enter the names of the labs in the second column. So this is, for example, we could type in safety lab for the first one, right? And then in the third row, you have the number of credits. So this is 1 credit, 1 credit. Lab 3 will be 2 credits. Lab 4 will be 2 credits. You can change these. If you know the sequence of your labs that are planned for the year, I recommend just entering them all at once. That way you're done, and you don't need to go back to it. I went ahead and entered a random selection of living environment labs. This one is from Brooklyn Tech, but obviously your lineup would be whatever you and your co-teacher decide on. I said earlier that you could set the number of credits or the value for the number of credits down here in the third row, but for reasons that I don't really want to get into in this video, I really prefer just to have each lab be 1 credit. It makes it a lot more simple. Now where this might get troublesome is for those state labs that are worth 4 credits. So let's look at beaks of finches here. You could just have beaks of finches be worth 4 credits, and then when you enter your grade, it would have to be a grade out of 40. But I recommend breaking it up like this, writing beaks of finches 1 of 4, and then having 4 of those. So here you'd have beaks of finches 2 of 4, beaks of finches 3 of 4, and beaks of finches 4 of 4, and having each one of those be worth 1 credit. Okay, it'll make it a lot easier, especially with the formatting. And then once you've entered all of your labs, your entire lineup of labs for the whole year, what you can do is you can go to Data and lock the entire sheet. So you go to Protected Sheets and Ranges, add a sheet, Sheets, Labs, Set Permissions, and then you have a choice between show a warning when editing this range. That's what I've been using, but you can also restrict who can edit this range. So if you trust yourself but you don't trust your colleagues or your co-teacher to make the edits appropriately, you could choose that one. I use show a warning, and then anytime that I'm here and I decide to change something from 1 to 4, it's going to say, heads up, you're trying to edit this part of the sheet that shouldn't be changed accidentally. Edit anyway, question mark, and you would click cancel, right? Because you never want to edit a locked sheet. So now you're done with the setup portion of this LabSheets tutorial. We have our roster. We have our credits sheet, which again you never touch. It's locked. Period 8 sheet, which we haven't started yet, and our labs sheet, which is also locked. You have your full lineup of labs set up for the year. Okay, now it's time to just enter the grades. So let's say you just finished grading. The student got a 10 out of 10. And ta-da, look what happened. The credits column updated. So as soon as I put that 10 out of 10 in that cell, my wife is making fun of me, the credits cell updated automatically. Alright, so let's move down the line here. Let's enter, let's say the student got 8 out of 10. Yep, that works. The credits column updated because 8 out of 10 is an 80%. So any grade that's 65% or above is going to edit that, is going to make that column update, reflecting the number of credits that is assigned to it. So let's try 7 out of 10. That works. 6 out of 10? Oh, no. So 6 out of 10 is less than 65%, so it will not update that column. What you would do is give the lab back to that student with feedback, tell him complete the lab or clarify some misconceptions, maybe add a little more detail, and then once they give it back to you, you put in the grade, and that would update the column. Okay? So let's just say everybody in the class got 10s on the safety lab, right? It's basically just a safety contract at the beginning of the year to make sure that everybody is going to be doing the appropriate thing with the supplies and materials. And let's just start entering some more grades. So 10, 10, 10. So you see that the credits column is updating appropriately. What if the student got a 0? Put in a 0 for an incomplete, or for actually not an incomplete, for a missing assignment. For a missing lab, a student would get a 0. And it appears as a bolded red 0. So those are easy to find at the end of a long school year when you're looking for which labs that student is missing. All those zeros will appear in bright red, and you can kind of track those down and have some extra copies of those labs in a folder or behind your door so that they can make up those assignments. Labs 3 through 7 are 2-credit labs. And finally, one other cool feature that Melissa added to the spreadsheet, if you move to the right here, you see these 2 extra columns, office hours and parent contact. So office hours has a drop-down menu here, which has various interventions that could benefit the student, or you could actually invite a student to help another student who's struggling. So let's say, for example, the student who has an incomplete needs to come to office hours, right? But instead of you leading the instruction, you could say, well, that student has been assigned a peer tutor, and then another student who's, maybe rocking it, and she's done all the labs and great detail and seems to understand the content really well, you would go down there and you'd invite her to be a peer tutor. So you invite it to be a peer tutor. If she accepted, you could even say she is a peer tutor for this student. And then parent contact has various options for their communications with the parents to document what you've done to communicate with those parents, either by email, by phone, or down here you have LTA and guidance issues. So you might want to ask Melissa what those are, and if you have any other questions about these 2 columns, I would get in touch with her about that. All right. If you have any questions about this, feel free to email me or give me a call. My Google Voice number is 201-515-5319, and I'd be happy to help you. And that's a wrap. So that was my first video using Screencast-O-Matic, and I think it worked out pretty well. I'm still trying to figure out how to embed questions using Edpuzzle, but for now, that's it. That's my video. Bye.